Oh, hello folks, my name's Dougal. I'm going to talk through, as John has set up, claim systems, insurance claim systems. I'm going to talk and focus primarily on home claims, but the same narrative could really be true for motor claims, corporate insurance claims, even health claims also. So, it all starts in claims with the initial demand, does it not? It starts with something really unfortunate happening, the worst case scenario happening. So on the home front, let's say something really untoward has happened. There has been a leak from the roof, a burst pipe this time of year, something like that. You've come home to a bit of an absurd scene. What are some of the things that would be important to us in terms of having our claim handled? Claims is very much the service that we all love to hate. We've all heard kind of stories, either personal experience or from loved ones of something that's gone appallingly badly. But let's take those experiences and put them to one side. What would work for us in terms of having a claim handled? What were some of the aspects that would be important to us? Speed, yeah. What else could be important? Accuracy of the work, yeah. Any more for any more? Contact and this sort of stuff. Okay, so already we're building a picture. Speed definitely a factor. Not for everyone. You try and do something quick for me today. I'm saying, look, I'm in Birmingham today. It's going to have to wait till the end of the week. So some people are saying, look, it has to be at a predetermined time for me. Some people are saying, look, I want to be really hands-on with the fix. Other people will be saying, oof, I'm out, forget it. You guys handle this for me and report back. That ties into your very comment about by what method do we keep people informed. For me today, it would be by email. For some of you guys, it might be phone. That's the nuance very, very important to capture. So suffice to say that there's a raft of different things that are going to matter to different people. There is a raft of variation coming in the front end in terms of what matters and what's important to people. Well, let's take this out of the sphere of the arbitrary and talk about an example that I saw. I'm taking myself back a couple of years now when I was out on the vans with a big badge insurance firm, their mobile field agents as they termed them. And we turned up, we went to this particular lady's home at about 9:20 in the morning. And what we saw when we arrived was her detached, modern brick-built house, genuinely still smouldering. Not talking burnt to the ground, but smouldering. The bottom floor completely uninhabitable, blackened with smoke, really difficult to be in there for more than a few minutes. The kitchen where the fire had actually started completely leveled. I mean, everything just molten and melted. Well, what had happened is this lady had loaded the tumble dryer as the kids were having breakfast, kind of about 7:30. She'd put it on, she'd whip the kids up into the car and drop them off to school. When she'd come back, she was kind of confronted with this scene. So the chap that I was with kind of quickly sprang into action, and we were accommodated in a neighbour's front room, and he went into all the kind of questions of the day, and he was saying, so first question, what's your policy number? No idea, kind of overwhelmed that you'd even ask that. Second question, what was your maiden name? Okay, right, I'm getting a feel for how this is going. Third question, where did you live before you lived here? And so on and so forth. And then once we kind of broken the ice with those kind of popularity gainers, we went in to say, okay, well, can you tell me what's happened? And she's saying, isn't it bloody obvious? So we were insistent that we went through all the same stuff that she had talked through on the telephone only kind of an hour and 10 minutes previous. So we go through all that stuff. And then the chap kind of, he begins to prescribe what's going to happen. And he says, look, here's the deal. We've got a lovely little hotel just up the road. They've got a swimming pool. They've got parking. It'll be grand for you. And she says, no, forget it. You're not getting it. You're not getting it. And she completely puts a spanner in the works and says, no, we're not even discussing that yet. I'm not ready. What do you think was the thing that was absolutely all important to her where nothing was happening until that was discussed? Best guess, please. Empathy is certainly lacking. You certainly picked up what I'm putting down, but no, not entirely incorrect. A factor for sure. This guy. This is our guy. It was a question of where's my cat? Where's my cat? And she was deadly serious. She was saying nothing is happening until you find my cat. And actually, I'm a little bit perturbed that we've not even had that conversation yet. And, I mean, it wasn't the chap's fault. He was following the letter of the law, the letter of the procedural law as best he can. He had the right forms on his clipboard. He was answering the right questions. Even went as far to printer out copies of the form with the battery-operated printer that he had in one of the 3 cases he had with him. So, I mean, that was all fab from the organization's point of view, but it was missing the mark for her. So, I mean, this, to my mind, is a classic example of what can happen when you miss the mark in terms of absorbing that variety comes in. It invariably always gives you crappy service from the customer's point of view, and it invariably always bakes in activity, very often costly activity, that we could do without. Okay. So, I tell you the kicker, the absolute kicker. We got in the car afterwards, and I was saying to the chap, "What do you make of that interaction?" He said, I tell you, those brand XYZ tumble dryers, they always go on fire." I thought, that is insightful, is it not, in terms of the purpose of this organization? What is the purpose of this organization? Is it to help people stay safe and limit this type of demand, or is it to kick back and go, "Oh God, I know if you've got one of those, it's only a matter of time before you're going up in flames"? So remarkable. And I mean, John touched on the importance of getting good knowledge. I mean, fascinating if you're an insurance firm and you have knowledge about, as they very often do, about this type of dryer is typically can go on fire, or these types of push-fit pipes, like that might connect your ensuite to the main bathroom or whatever. Those are very prone to leaking. So they've got a lot of that data. What do they do with it? Do they pass it to their sales guys to inquire if you've got any of this stuff? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. That would be the advanced course. Okay, so let's dig a little bit deeper, if we can, and look in more detail at what happens in the innards, the guts of one of these systems. So as discussed, worst case happens, it all begins with demand. Typically what happens is people pick up the phone. Certainly at first point of contact, the phone is most often used. Some of the insurers, they would love you to go down digital channels. They would love you to use email and whatnot, the presumption being that is cheaper. But oftentimes when the worst happens, we like to be on the phone. And we go into what the contact center, much like John has described. We'll go through the kind of automated IVR, press 1 if it's wet, press 4 if it was nicked, press 5 if it was on fire, that kind of stuff. We'll go through and we'll get identified, that kind of stuff. And we're then into the body of the beast in what they call FNOL, so an acronym for First Notification of Loss. So when we're in this contact center, there's a number of things that are the primary focus. I mean, the IT driving a lot of these conversations. So back to our chap in the woman's neighbor's front room, where the first question is often, "What's your policy number?" It's not, "Oh my God, what's happened? What's driven you to call me at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning?" But it's very, very, I was about to describe it as business-like, but it's actually not even that. It's what's your policy number? And you're thinking, "God, I don't know. I'm scrambling to make some sense of my life right now, let alone have that." So what are they focused on? Well, they're very interested in, is this claim legit? Because we've got a cost focus, don't we? So is this claim legit? So they're thinking, is this claim fraudulent? Puts me in mind of a call. I was listening to some demand, kind of headsets on. Lady phones in and she says, we've had a power cut. All the freezer food is ruined. I noticed in my policy document, she was the only person that I think has read them, doesn't just file them away in the kitchen drawer. She's saying, "I noticed in my policy documentation that I'm covered with no excess for freezer food. And we say, yeah, absolutely. We can, freezer food, we can do that all day long. Let's hammer that out for you. So what was in the freezer? And she goes on and gives this kind of muster roll of, well, there's fish cakes. I think there was definitely peas. They were open though. There was oven chips. I want to tell you, there was a frozen chicken in there as well. We said, okay, fab, we can work with this. So give me an idea of cost. Oh my God, now you're testing me. This is like one of the questions that they ask MPs, what does a carton of milk cost? And they've got no idea. So she was saying, okay, oven chips, couple of quid, peas, oh God knows, 3 quid, who knows? And she got to the chicken and she said, I tell you, I remember the chicken because we bought that in Waitrose. We don't often shop in Waitrose. And I remember being aghast at the price. It was organic and it was $9.99. Licked the pencil, $9.99, very interesting. And the phone receiver went down, and the chap turned to me and said, example of fraud there, $9.99 chicken, never heard the likes of it, never heard the likes of it at all, never heard the likes of it. So when you dig a little bit deeper, you found that this chap, he was targeted on finding 28 pieces of fraud in the month. Now, I forget what date it is, but today would be a great day to observe this system. On the 29th of the month, when you're about to tick over into the next month, you're thinking, well, what am I going to do today? Today I'm finding fraud. But we've got to ask ourselves, if this lady was a master criminal, would she have chosen a Waitrose organic chicken at £9.99 to be the vehicle of her fraudulent activity? I tell you what, I suspect not. I suspect not. So they're interested in fraud. And I mustn't poke fun too hard because there are legitimate problems with fraud out there in the market. So they need to be vigilant. It's only a question of method, though. They're interested in what is the end price of this claim going to be, because of course they've got different teams. John's just started, so he can deal with the cheap stuff. I've been here 20 years, so I can deal with the stuff that's over 10, over 20, over 25K. So we kind of shuffle out the cars that way. We're interested in, are there any technical specialisms that we need involved, or that we can farm this stuff out? One could almost say there's a de facto purpose at this point in the system of get this work off my desk. Yeah, just farm it out to the other aspects around the center. And there's even, in some of the organizations that we've studied, they even organize themselves by peril. You and I, using the English language, would call it by the type of problem we're facing, but of course in kind of underwriting speak, they call it peril. So what you could find, especially this time of year when it starts to really rain and pour, is you might find the peril involved in stuff that gets wet really frantically busy, not able to answer the phone quick enough, not enough hours in the day. And the group of people that deal with stuff that's been nicked, sitting there kind of twiddling their thumbs, waiting for something to give. So, I mean, very interesting stuff and does very wacky stuff with their capacity. So, demand has come in. We've begun to put kind of our spin on it with our interest. What happens next? Well, some people are just blankly not covered. This is an interesting one when you begin to hear on the coalface repetition of this sort of thing. Hello, I would like to see if I'm covered for the roof of my house. Oh, have you ever done any maintenance on the roof of your house? No, I've been here 30 years, I've never done a thing. Well, you see, silly of you to phone because that's wear and tear, isn't it? You've not done any work. Okay, but I've still got water pouring in my roof. Yeah, but you're not covered, so you're bothering the wrong guy now. Right, okay, that's interesting. Do you have anyone that can help? No, beat it. Off you go. And the phone goes down, and then another person later that day phones up, and you can kind of hear sometimes operatives having a conversation, which is, you know, that's the 4th time today someone's phoned up. They're not covered. Oh, I know they're not covered. It's ridiculous. Phoned up, but they're looking for help. Okay, that's really interesting. When you speak to the folks in their supply chain, a lot of these bigger insurers will have builders, repair agents on the payroll. And these are guys that are crying out for work. They're crying out for work. So it's almost as if we are missing a legitimate and possibly lucrative matchmaking exercise to say, actually, we could connect people that do repairs with people who have holes in roofs. Anyway, in the current idiom, predominantly not interested. Sometimes we push back. We say, look, you've got to go away and fetch some receipts, fetch some proof of ownership in their terminology. So we say, you've not come in clean. Away you go and get some more stuff for me. Sometimes, and I'm stressing the word some, we agree a resolution there and then. Very atypical. I would suggest somewhere less than 5% is normal of agreed resolution at this early stage. The majority of things end up getting passed out, farmed out to supply agents. So these are people that are going to replace your telly. If the kids have whacked a cricket ball into it, they're going to come out and fix that leaking sink unit or whatever it is. They're going to replace your Kindle that got trodden on or something like that. So this number is actually can be quite frightening. It can be as great as 70% of stuff that the real key value work farmed out to other suppliers. So when the suppliers get it, what do they do? So, well, the truth is they kind of go over all the same stuff again, don't they? I mean, we've heard that from the fire example. So if they're terming this piece of work FNOL, first notification of loss, I would term this piece of work SNOL, second notification of loss. They're just rerunning the fun. They're going, okay, tell me all about it, and you're thinking, God, I've just had this conversation yesterday or the day before. Okay, no, go back over it in all its gory detail. Okay, then what? Do we get some action? No, we're into inspection and validation. So back to this notion of de facto purpose. So uptight about the causation of cost are we that we have a cottage industry in inspecting and validating, making sure that the claim is valid. Okay, at that stage, do we get any action? No, not yet, because of course reports have to be written. Typically then emailed, often report written, checked, formatted, emailed over, sits in an inbox for a while, picked up. And then we ultimately schedule the work. Thereafter, when we actually get involved in doing the critical value work, doing the repair, replacing the item, we've got a great question about how ready to actually get out there and effect a repair right first time with the right bits in the van, the right expertise in our heads, and the right people to do it are we? Well, the truth of the matter is we're typically not that interested in doing that. So we get an awful lot of reworking, checking, and chasing going on, where you're actually getting this call center, which is busy enough as it is, having to chase these people that we're paying. The IT that we've spent big money on to ease our way through this process, it typically keeps claims hidden. I would term it out of sight, out of mind, because a claim that is open is no longer on your desk. It's tucked away neatly in the IT. All of this rework, failure, unclean handoffs, waste activity is driving enormous amounts of failure demand back into the contact center. Every time in claim systems that we measure this, we're talking approximately 68 to about 76%. It is just crazy how much you could just bet your life on it. What are the top instances of failure demand? The first one is really interesting. People say, essentially, what am I covered for? X, Y, Z has happened. What am I covered for? Which is absolutely remarkable. You wouldn't pitch up to the airport with your bags packed, having packed your anorak and your swim shorts, going, I've booked something, but I don't know where to. This demand really boiled down is, what have I bought? The sales process so lacking such illumination that people are not sure what they've bought. Standard, common or garden variety progress chasing. So what's happening with my claim? I'm now so confused. I thought I was dealing with you, bank, ABC, insurer, XYZ, and I keep getting calls from all these people called 123 validation services, and I'm just confused as to where it's all going. And I'm not happy with your supplier. I'm not happy your supplier is fascinating because these firms are paying, if it's someone's lost their iPad, the fee might be 50 quid plus VAT. If it is, there's a hole in my roof and we need to get up there and scaffold it, it might be 600 quid plus VAT. But needless to say, every time that a supplier is engaged in this type of work, there's a check to be paid. So if we're paying these suppliers with the logic, outsourcing this work will be better quality and cheaper, and yet they're driving lots of failure demand into us, right, okay, well that's telling us an interesting story about the degree of value that we're getting from them. From our point of view as consumers, what does this mean for us? How capable is this system? Typical end-to-end time in home claim systems, and again, there'll be variances in other types of claims, but this gives you the main narrative. An average of 70 days to an upper control limit of around 200. Very frequently we see in excess of that. Let me put this in real-term perspective. If your kitchen had flooded over the last month, in the month of November, the guys that are coming out to see you, they would be talking about getting you sorted for Easter, not for Christmas. And it also, with that kind of end-to-end time, it tells us a lot about what's happening in our system with costs. The common rationalization when you pull this sample with the folks that design and manage these systems, they say, right, okay, well, I'm glad you brought this up. What must be in your sample there is lots and lots of, we get subsidence claims, see? And a subsidence claim, so if your house is falling down, it could take as long as a year even to monitor that before we take any action. Yeah, could take as much as a year to monitor that. Of course, when you study the work, you realize that this is not because the sample is jigged full of subsidence claims, but is actually because there's loads of handoffs, unclean handovers, rework, waste, failure, etc., etc. So, why have we got this situation? So we've got two primary factors here that are held as totally beloved. One, performance must be managed, and two, cost must be kept in control. Absolutely fair, sensible, and plausible in isolation. When you begin to see how they're operationalized in the work, things like functional work design, arbitrary targets, like John has mentioned in terms of average handling time, time to answer rate, etc. The classic phone stats that I'm quoting now, the standardized IT, keeping things out of sight, out of mind, a notion that if we have good contracts with suppliers, that will be sufficient to keep our costs under control, even though they've been so nailed to the floor on unit cost that they begin doing anything they possibly can to do revenue generating work when they're out. We have a priority which is inspect over fix. Cost reduction, we do wacky stuff like if costs are getting out of hand, we might think, let's tweak up the excess. So we're trying to do some demand limitation. We're totally blind to the fact that we've got oodles of waste and oodles of failure in the system, but we're trying to limit the amount of claims coming in. So, I mean, how would it feel for us as consumers if we felt that we were being limited from making a claim, a legitimate claim, because the thresholds of excess were being knocked up and our insurer wasn't actually acting on the things that matter? And so on and so forth. So there's a myriad of things that are creating this in the system. Money hemorrhaging all over the place, and the main takeaway is, despite our fixation on cost, we are blind to the true nature of where money is being spent in the system. So a couple of questions vis-a-vis budgeting. Number one, how much of this cost is actually in the budget? Well, the answer, of course, is all of it. All of it resides there. Question number two is, how much of this cost is made visible? How much of this narrative is made visible by the budget? The answer, not a lot, indeed none. If we've had this focus of be uptight on cost but not be clear on the causation of cost, what do we do? What do we do instead? So changing measures is absolutely the most critical thing that we could do to right this ship. Focusing on measures that help us understand the nature of the work. Understanding, we've talked about the split of demand, understanding the type and frequency of customer problems so we can train the front line well against that we can get into bed with the right suppliers, not the wrong ones, people that solve problems. One-stop agreed resolution, trying to get that right up. The more we can get one-stop agreed resolution up, the less workload of open claims we have on us, and the more ready we are to get up and deal with the next claim that's coming in. Number of touches, a fantastic proxy for the amount of effort and work that we're putting in. And importantly, when thinking about what matters to customers, have we ticked the right boxes there? Yes, no. This is the biggest, biggest departure for a frontline in the claim system that's been brought up on reading a script, being guided one page of IT to the next, having them really able to give people a good hard listening to and pull out what's important to them is the biggest stretch in redesigning the system, in my opinion. Lagging measures, customer satisfaction, what are our top reasons for dissatisfaction? The actuality of the cost in the flow, critical. Proven fraud, let's get interested in what fraud is proven rather than what fraud is muted. Typically, over 20% of all claims are put forward as being possible fraud. You can imagine the outcome of having 400 people targeted to each find 28 pieces a month. You're going to get lots of nonsense information into that. Over 20% muted, less than 2% actually proven. Colleague morale, critical also. Okay, so what can we expect if we redesign this system? Here's some typical results. Failure demand, 70% very normally. We would be hoping that would come down to circa the 20% mark. Certainly that's been our experience. If you work longer and harder with your suppliers, it can come down even more from there. End-to-end time from an average of well over 2 months to under a couple of weeks. You can be measuring your end-to-end time in days, not weeks and months. That's pretty cool. Number of touches typically drops by 40%, again as a proxy measure of the efficacy and effort going into our action. One-stop resolution, I quoted early on, typically sub 5%. Very possible to get that right up to as much as 1/3. We've got some insurers that are working with really innovative stuff at the end of the call. Yep, I've understood this claim to be genuine. I've understood what matters to you. I tell you what, I can have an Amazon gift card in your inbox in the coming seconds, or I can have Amazon deliver the product right away. What suits you better? So we can get that agreed resolution right up. Indemnity spend, typically our clients are saving many millions. Some of the bigger badge outfits, many millions a month. The critical thing to understand is in conjunction with that, a lot of these firms have very high withdrawn rates. You can imagine if you've got an end-to-end time over 200 days, you could well have the occasion where a number of people are going, look, I'm not going to even bother. So my message here, if you act on the causes of waste and failure, indemnity spend falls. Though be prepared that in some instances, if you have a high amount of withdrawn claims, that when you drop the end-to-end time, some people might be more inclined to go the course. Customer satisfaction, we're really pro having customer sat that gives you an idea of what are the top reasons of dissatisfaction, but NPS is kind of the status quo in the industry. The last big multinational we worked with took their NPS from sub-0 to plus 55. And this is in a market where anything over 50 is considered really rather good. Rapidly in summation, inability to absorb what matters always drives down service and drives up cost. Typical claim systems are hemorrhaging money throughout their flow as a result of work design. Conventional budgeting does not throw this into stark relief, but importantly, capability measures do. Measures relating to capability of the system and to purpose will begin flushing these issues out. Thank you very much, folks.